of the toughest questions Americans face is should they rent or should they buy? And really the question is, are you going to create more wealth through renting and reinvesting or buying and building equity? So we wanted to try to give some guidance to help people make decisions in different parts of the country, different cities, and as the U.S. as a whole. Historically, there's been a mania towards ownership in America. There's this American dream was described as owning your own home. And this is one of the things that initially inspired some of the initial research in this area is that really true? Because we've all heard, why throw your money away on rent? Don't rent when you can own. So the question becomes, well, what should an individual do to build wealth? And historically, owning has won. Now, some of this began to change in the early 2000s, and we started to see prices of homes escalate very, very rapidly, perhaps past where any fundamental levels of income could support those pricings. And sure enough, we saw a bubble in early 2006-07. We've seen a bottom around 2012. So there's been some form of a cycle induced into not only housing pricing, but it's also that same cycle's been induced into the trade-off between should I rent and reinvest or should I buy and build equity? So the question's not so straightforward these days, especially since about 1999-2000. We look at a national composite of the U.S. as a whole. We look at 23 large metropolitan areas. Even though we use names like New York City, we mean Metro New York or Metro LA or Metro Dallas. But we do have 23 of the largest metropolitan areas around the country. When you're purchasing a property on your own, you're doing the internal calculus. All we simply did was boil it down to how will an individual create more wealth? They can buy a property and build equity, but of course they have cost. When they own, they're going to have some cost, such as the maintenance, the property taxes, insurance, etc. We take all those things away. They have an opportunity cost for their down payment. We account for that. They get a tax write-off. That's a benefit. They get property appreciation. That's another benefit to ownership. So we debit and credit all the cost and benefits of owning and see how much wealth you can build over a period of time. And then we do the same on the renting, but in renting, it's renting the same comparable home, same type property, and reinvesting that rent differential and that down payment into a market portfolio of stocks and bonds. So you build wealth by renting and reinvesting in the stock market and bond markets versus ownership and building equity, i.e. wealth, through just ownership over a period of time. As a general rule, there's some questions you should ask yourself no matter where you are in the country, and it's in terms of should I be buying or should I be renting to build wealth? And the number one thing I think you have to ask yourself is you have to be honest with yourself, and you have to say, am I a strong saver? Because the model that we build all of this on assumes that you'll take that money and reinvest it monastically into the stock market, into the bond markets. So you've got to ask yourself, am I really a disciplined saver? And if the answer is no, you need on average to lean a little bit more towards ownership, because ownership at its heart is a forced savings plan. Another question that you want to ask yourself is, how long am I planning to stay here? Am I someone who's highly mobile? Do I need, perhaps I need job mobility to move from, say, Southeast Florida this year to Atlanta, Georgia next year, to New York City 2 years after that? The cost of selling is so high, it hurts your accumulation of wealth. So if you're someone who needs that mobility, or perhaps young people tend to be highly mobile as well, then you need to be looking at renting on average as a better way to build wealth.